tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast. You are listening to 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗃, and today on this episode of Cloud Native Wisdom, a short video series, we dedicated our effort to get back in time what happened on October 20th of 2025 during the AWS US East-1 outage. As you know, the US-EAST-1 region is one of the AWS largest and most critical data center hosting infrastructure for thousands of major websites and applications. When DynamoDB, a key database service, began experiencing high error rates, it created a ripple effect across AWS interconnected system. This caused widespread disruption because many applications rely on DynamoDB for data storage and retrieval operation. When DNS resolution failed, client service couldn't locate the DynamoDB endpoint, and this triggered a feedback loop to the September 2015 DynamoDB outage. Each retry consumed more resources, causing more timeout, which in turn trigger further retries, creating a vicious cycle. So let's welcome Richard Simon, host of CloudTherapist podcast, and my 𝗘𝗍𝗀𝗃 live stream partner, and also my co-host on Code to Culture, Platform Engineering Unpack for Enterprises. And in this episode, we're diving a little deeper than usual because this AWS outage gave us some lesson, and we will be trapping being an end user. What should we do when AWS is down? Now let's circle back in time and see what Richard come up to on his forensic report of AWS US-EAST-1.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back with you again, Saim. What can I say, and where can we start with this one? I mean, it's as you said, it's caused a massive ripple effect, right, over the last week. I'm sure dozens of gigabytes of data somewhere had been created on the internet just because of this, maybe even terabytes worth of data just because of this outage. So yes, you're correct. It was the DynamoDB DNS, so basically all the services that rely on talking to DynamoDB and using DynamoDB as their database. So the DNS service that points these applications and cloud environments to DynamoDB. Apparently that got utterly obliterated during some routine propagation of the DNS tables. So that was a problem. Yes, AWS put out a post on that. I think it's probably the only explanation, only post area that I've seen on their website that explains that. Or maybe we'll drop the link to that in the description of the video. But just to kind of summarize the events and the sequence of events that happened. So basically, the DNS has a number of enactors, or at least two enactors in this case. These are essentially the scripts or tools that kind of update the DNS table. These are obviously automated processes, and they're synchronized services, and they essentially do all the kind of DNS infrastructure updating for AWS. Now these sometimes run in parallel, or they do run in parallel in order to do things like redundancy, scalability across the kind of different DNS partitions and so on. But the idea was that I think the DNS enactor 1 stalled a mid-update. So during the updating of the DNS tables for DynamoDB, the enactor 1 stalled for some reason, or got delayed in terms of what its normal job would be to update the tables. Now, this left a incomplete configuration of data in the metadata store for the DNS entries. As this was still struggling to get through, because like I said, it's been delayed, enactor 2, DNS enactor 2 came in and misinterpreted the fact that enactor 1 was still running and thought it had completed this role. So enactor 2 kind of came in and did its job, which is to read read the partial data and thought it was empty and overwrote all of the still valid DNS records and blanked those basically to 0. Obviously, what that did was that caused a problem, for all of the services that clearly rely on those DNS entries, and really that's kind of where the flaw started happening. That's where the sort of the cascade effect occurred, and all the services started failing. Yes, AWS picked it up within a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, I think. They said they had restored the services, but clearly so-called stale data, stale information was still kicking around, maybe in the local DNSs for all the cloud environments and so on. Obviously, that all depends on the architectures and the designs, the various customers, AWS customers were using. But clearly, this had like a knock-on effect, cascading effect. So the services for certain applications took much longer to come online. But AWS is supposed to have like a checker for the enactors to make sure that they're doing their job is done and is complete. Apparently, this either assumed that enactor 1 had actually completed properly, or got the wrong information, got the wrong end of the stick, and then thought, yes, we can kind of enactor 2 can come in. So all the usual file locking and everything else that should happen didn't seem to happen in this case, and I think that's what caused the problem. Now, as I said, AWS have said they detected it and fixed it. They took the corrective action, which was to disable these enactors, add state validation, concurrency checks, and harden the automation pipelines and so on. But obviously, this was after the fire. This was after the outage that was caused on the platform. Now, we've also recently heard that there's been another, not necessarily an outage, but just some of the same regions EC2 services being affected. So there's been some throttling by AWS to keep those going. Apparently, they're saying if you keep trying to relaunch your EC2 containers, then you will eventually be successful. Now, obviously, these are containers, so we're running in either in Kubernetes or in a containerized environment, so we should be able to spin these up a lot more quickly, right, Saim? I think so.
Yes.
Hopefully. So we'll see what the repercussions of that are as well. But that's the update.
100%.
Yeah, and then obviously we've had a lot of LinkedIn influencers and IT commentators all jumping in, on the bandwagon and talking about various things. And before your CEO could say, "Do we have HA in another region?" There's been some wild and crazy recommendations coming from these influencers and commentators. So they've ranged from everything from you should go multi-cloud to you need resilience in your for your critical services, or you need to leave AWS altogether. The recommendations have just really been very knee-jerk reaction and pretty much outrageous, really, in terms of that. Now, the BBC picked up this outage, but their focus seemed to be interviewing some teenagers, because apparently Snapchat was knocked out as well as part of this outage. So I'm not sure the BBC has its priorities right there when it comes to the services. But anyway, that's a different discussion. We've also had a lot of the alternative cloud providers, the ACPs, as I call them, kind of jumping on it as well and saying, well, maybe you should consider coming to our cloud, or maybe doing a hybrid cloud solution instead. So that's been part of it as well. Obviously, a lot of people saying, well, I'm sure that all of the CEOs are now calling in their CIO and CTO and interrogating them about the resilience, and availability of their business services. Well, of course, this is all nonsense, because, when the CIO and CTO gets called in, as I wrote on a LinkedIn post recently as a response, when the CEO calls them in, the CIO and CTO tell the CEO how much is going to cost to make all the HA capability, the high availability capability happen. The CEO goes to the CFO, and then the CFO says, forget it. So that's why we are where we are with these services. essentially. But some people actually on LinkedIn, as I was reading a lot of the articles, did get it right, almost right. So they were talking about, we need HA in a different region. We need a multi-region HA, which I think is the correct way to go here. So the multi-region architectures and automated recovery, at least if not DR, full DR, is probably what is required, I think, in this case. So my recommendation and my sort of final line is really, you need to look at this as a kind of a risk calculation of all of your services. What will be the impact on your business? How critical are these services? Can we categorize the services into kind of, I don't know, 3 groups? So have the ugly, the bad, or the good and okay to lose services. So it's kind of a reversal of the good and bad and ugly, if you like. And then calculate how much would it cost to build these services in a different region. How much will it cost us to rebuild all of this in a different region, or have them on standby in a different region as well? So it's all about, it's all about cost really, and which is why, like I said, the CFOs in most cases have gone forget it. It's like there's no way we can do this. And then ask your CTO, can we reduce the costs of having the HA in a different region? So, for example, if we're not cloud native in our production region, can we be more cloud native in our HA region? Because with cloud native services, as you well know, Saim, we can be a lot quicker. We can spin up things a lot quicker. We can bring on services a lot quicker. And therefore, we should be able to recover from such catastrophic failures and outages a lot quicker in the future.
100%, absolutely. And as you actually mentioning this, I was looking at the other screen and Azure went down. Some of the Azure services are actually down at this moment of time as we record.
We'll save that for another Cloud Native Wisdom episode.
Oh my God. Yes, that's a very extreme news. I think like the outage season has just started. Something similar to the UEFA Champions League season had just started.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for reInvent, AWS reInvent. So, all eyes are on AWS. Are they going to mention it at the reInvent keynotes? Is Werner Vogels, the CTO of AWS, going to put his hand up and apologize and confess and take us through the outage, and hopefully not too technical terms, so that all the audience can understand it? I think it will be prudent of them to do that. If they don't do that, I think that'd be slightly naive on AWS's side, sort of perspective. I think they should, confess that and apologize and put their hand up, and then kind of go through a full, explanation of what happened to all the public that are watching.
I remember, Richard, we have a bet on this thing. We have an internal bet.
We do. Yeah,
and
we do.
I won't tell people like what our bet was, but remember, folks, we have been actually seeing this very critically. Might be the possibility we'll announce our bet on this on AWS reInvent live stream on the keynote, because this year's reInvent is far different than all the other reInvent as well, and we're really looking forward to it. What's the keynote stage is telling us about the outage in itself? Is it a lot of apologies, or is it is just a miss of new messages, or like, oh, now we have this service that you can only use for the incident management or
let's focus on the new announcements, bury the outage.
Yes, absolutely. That's the game. But it's been interesting thank you for Richard sharing your insight, because I think we recently come to know that internally DynamoDB is one of those services that the AWS rely on heavily, whether you've been using ECS or Lambda or S3 bucket or bunch of other services heavily using DynamoDB, and it's been a main culprit for it as well. But also there are some incident reports, some missing it's some of the things that me and Richard is actually looking and taking a very deep look at it, and we will see in the future if they actually announce some of the more critical depth details about this incident. We will be covering again as well, because it seemed like a very big thing, big outage, like it's more than a 2-hour according to the SLAs of the DynamoDB, it should be 45 to 60 minutes off, but it's a 2 hour of delay, so it's been a big one. But thanks, Richard, for sharing your insight. Hope you enjoyed the conversation here, you find something useful, and if you have been hit by some of the outages and you have some stories to tell, even we can actually showcase those on our podcast as well. Just link them on the YouTube description, and me and Richard will reach out to you sooner rather than later. Have a wonderful day, and we're looking forward to hearing you again. Bye bye, everyone.